Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the Fall Start Fantasy Podcast, where I'm going to be talking about the tight end position. As many of you know, the tight end position is extremely difficult to figure out who to be starting each week, and unless you have one of the best tight ends, it is very difficult to decide who to start. So, in this episode, I'm going to be talking about each of the tight ends and their unique situations and what you should be doing with them moving forward. I'm going to be putting each of the tight ends in the NFL into a unique tier, as there is no team where you want to start multiple tight ends from. I'm going to be talking about their situations. In the S tier, we will have the same person that you want to start every single week and feel great about. In the A tier, there are the teams that you're going to start their tight end, and you're going to feel pretty good about them, though they will not likely win you a week. They will be someone solid to start. In the B tier, we're going to have some guys who are going to have some major up and downs, but are definitely better than everyone below them. In the C tier will be a list of teams that you can look to stream in good situations, and in the D tier are teams that you want to actively avoid unless you have to start someone from that situation. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start with the two most obvious answers, and that is, of course, Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs and Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens. No surprise there, they're going into the S tier, and if you have them, you are most likely not going to care about the rest of this video, as you're only going to be looking to start someone else for 1 week. But we're going to go ahead and get on to our next team here, and that is the Arizona Cardinals with their Zach Ertz, and I'm going to be putting him into the B tier. Now, Zach Ertz is someone who has been absolutely fantastic so far for many teams. He's someone that I would happily put into the A tier, maybe even the S tier, if it wasn't for the fact that DeAndre Hopkins is coming back. That team has had some serious injury issues, with Rondale Moore missing the first few weeks and AJ Green missing a week. Andy Isabella has, I believe, been let go from the team, and there is a multitude of factors that are going into what Zach Ertz is able to do for the team, but it has overall been pretty good. But if you're looking towards the future, Zach Ertz is not someone that you're going to be wanting to start every single week with extreme confidence. He's going to be someone great until DeAndre Hopkins gets back, and then we will see what his role becomes. So for now, I'm going to be putting him in the B tier. After that is the Atlanta Falcons and Kyle Pitts. Now, for many owners of Kyle Pitts, you'll be wanting to put him in the D tier, but I can promise you this, Kyle Pitts is still worthy of the A tier. Now, in this episode, I'm going to be talking specifically about I'm going to mention 3 different other episodes of different fantasy football shows. One of those is Andrew Cooper's tight end guide over at Fantasy Alarm. This is a fantastic tight end write-up that talks about all of the fantasy football tight end options for the year. And Andrew Cooper does a fantastic job talking about what you're going to be wanting there. But the number one thing you're looking for is a tight end who is a top 2 target on their team. And while it may not feel like that, Kyle Pitts is the number 2 target on the Atlanta Falcons, and he has only been behind Drake London on that offense. And while he is doing a lot of pass blocking, as their offensive line has not been great, he is someone who is still getting a decent amount of targets. And you can start Kyle Pitts every week with confidence, despite the fact that it may not feel like it. Now, the next article that I'm going to be referencing is JJ Zachary's How Rookie Quarterbacks Affect Their Teammates. This also talks about mobile quarterbacks, which brings us into the next tight end that I want to talk about, and that is Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, as many of you know, the Philadelphia Eagles have been doing a fantastic job with the run game right now. Jalen Hurts is getting some rushing touchdowns, as well as Miles Sanders, and they're able to do a great job on the rushing offense. And so the tight end position has not been getting many red zone catches for touchdowns. And so what we're hoping for Dallas Goedert is an increased production in the red zone as they get more touchdowns there from the passing offense. And so I'm going to be putting him in the B tier here, as he's someone that you can look to start week to week. But if you get the chance to trade up for an A or an S tier tight end, I recommend doing that. Now, the next article that we talk about is the Breakout Tight Ends article from JJ Zachary's, and that talks about how quarterbacks who have tight ends that the quarterback is a top 5 draft pick in the fantasy football community is someone that you want to target because it means that that quarterback is most likely very good and can process through their reads. And oftentimes, the tight end, unless you're one of these S tier tight ends, is not the first read in the offense, so they need to progress down to that. Now, when looking at that situation, no one pops out better to me than Tyler Higbee of the LA Rams. Tyler Higbee is someone that you were not excited about having on your team at the start of the year. However, he's someone I am putting into the A tier here because he has been a top 2 target on his team, the thing that we are looking for. In fact, Tyler Higbee is averaging more targets per game than both Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce at 9.5 targets per game. And a big reason for that is Cam Akers is getting slow back from injury. Darrell Henderson is not able to do much on the ground. And if Cooper Kupp is going to be getting his 13.5 targets per game, someone else has to be the target number 2 option, despite the fact that Allen Robinson has not been doing that great with that job. So Tyler Higbee goes into the A tier. He is someone that you are happy to start every single week and is potentially a buy low option in the tight end position. Now, the next tight end that I'm going to be talking about is Dawson Knox of the Buffalo Bills. Dawson Knox right now is out and is not going to be playing in this week's matchup, but he is someone that I'm going to be putting in the C tier no matter what. Dawson Knox is nowhere near the target leader on his team, nowhere near the second tight end target leader on his team with the tight end position, and it's just come down to the fact that the Bills brought in a ton of players for their receiving options. Isaiah McKenzie, Jamison Crowder are getting their targets, and they even drafted Khalil Shakir, who after this last week may be getting increase in targets himself because Khalil Shakir looked really good with those targets, and so a guy like Dawson Knox is being forgotten about in the tight end position. Now, however, the reason that he is not in the D tier is that Josh Allen is a very, very good quarterback, arguably the number 1 quarterback in the NFL. And when he gets down to the red zone, there's many different players that he's going to be able to look at and target for this position, and he may look at Dawson Knox. So I would say that he has an increased chance of getting a touchdown versus many of the other tight ends that I'm going to be looking at. The next team here is going to be the Carolina Panthers, who will go right into the D tier. Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore are leading the team in targets, with Robbie Anderson right behind Christian McCaffrey, which puts their tight end competing for the number 4 spot on that offense in targets. And given the fact that Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas are both competing for that position, I just don't see a way that a Carolina Panthers tight end becomes a top target without a major injury. Now, moving on to the next team, we have the Chicago Bears, and it comes as no surprise to Cole Kmet owners that they will be going into the D tier here. Cole Kmet has been a huge disappointment, as well as the entire Bears passing offense, as he has just not been able to put up any significant numbers. Now, with that being said, Cole Kmet has been averaging 2 targets per game so far this entire year, and while we may see that number go up, he is still the number 3 target on that team behind Equanimeous St. Brown. And as we get further on into the year, where the Bears start playing some weaker teams, Cole Kmet may deserve a higher spot on this list. Now, the next team I'm going to be talking about is the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals have one of the best passing offenses in the NFL. With the 3 great receivers that they have in Ja'Marr Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins, right now those 3 are all leading their offense in the target position. However, it comes to the fact that Hayden Hurst has not been forgotten. He is averaging 5.3 targets per game, tying him with Dalton Schultz of the Dallas Cowboys, which makes him tied for the tight end 12 in targets per game. Hayden Hurst is someone that you hope to get touchdowns, just like with Josh Allen, and so he is getting 5.3 per game. Now, moving on to the next team, we have David Njoku. Those of you who know me know that David Njoku is a guy that I had been clamoring for all offseason, and I am very happy to be putting him at the B tier. He's someone that you are looking to start every week unless you can get one of the better options, and the reason for that is the target competition on the Browns offense. If it was not for the stinker that David Njoku put up in week 1, you would be looking to start this guy every single week, and he may even earn himself into the A tier. However, his target volume will fluctuate week to week as he is competing with Donovan Peoples-Jones, Kareem Hunt, and David Bell for the number 2 position on the team. However, David Njoku has been able to do that so far. In the last few weeks, he is averaging more targets per game than a lot of other players, putting him right now at number 10 in the targets per game at an average of 5.8 so far this season, which only goes up when you remove his one target game that he had in week 1. Next team I'll be talking about is the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of people are really worried about what to do with Dalton Schultz, and I can tell you that you're just going to have to put him in B tier. With Michael Gallup coming back and Noah Brown taking a bigger step in this offense, Dalton Schultz is not looking to be the top 2 target on his team that we were hoping when going into the season, and he has just become a B tier option for the Dallas Cowboys offense, which has not been leading the league in offensive yards like many Cowboys fans would have been hoping. However, the team is still doing well. They are still getting down to the red zone, and Dalton Schultz is definitely a good option there and has an absolute chance to beat out Michael Gallup even for that number 2 position once he comes back and is healthy, which we hope for this week. The next team that I'm going to be talking about is the Denver Broncos, who will unsurprisingly be in the D tier. It is no secret to anyone that Albert Owebanon is a drop candidate for many teams, as he had been out for only 1 snap in the entire Thursday night game, and you just are not able to predict anything that the Broncos offense is going to be doing, except that they will be bad, and I would say that this is not a team you want to target. The next one here is TJ Hawkinson, who will be happily going into the B tier. TJ Hawkinson, when Amon-Ra St. Brown may even earn himself, or Amon-Ra St. Brown is out, earns himself an S tier spot. However, when he and DeAndre Swift are both in, TJ Hawkinson is a C or D tier prospect. So, due to the inconsistency and the future uncertain for those players who are much better targets for the Lions offense, TJ Hawkinson will be going into the B tier. Injuries will move him up, and healthy players will move him down. The next player I'm going to be talking about is Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. Robert Tonyan is a great red zone target for Aaron Rodgers, who is still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And while that team is struggling right now at wide receiver with the perhaps emergence of Romeo Doubs, he is still going to be looking for certain people that he knows and trusts in the red zone. And Robert Tonyan is, of course, one of those options, putting him into the C tier, along with Dawson Knox and Hayden Hurst as a red zone target. You hope for a touchdown. Next team I'm going to be talking about is the Houston Texans, who have been completely unpredictable with their tight end position. A lot of people were hoping that their second-year tight end would come and break out. However, so far right now, the Houston Texans have been giving most of the targets to Pharaoh Brown at the tight end position, even though he is still only averaging 3.3 targets per game, which puts him on the same tier as Albert Owebanon. So he is definitely someone you do not want to start. The next team I'm going to be putting in here is the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts offense has unsurprisingly looked really bad, and due to how bad the offensive line has looked, the 3 tight ends that they are rotating through there with Jelani Woods and Kylan Granson and Mo Alley-Cox, none of those 3 tight ends are really someone that you want to be starting week to week, and you're just going to be putting them in D tier, hoping that if you have to start one, you started the correct one of the 3 who caught some touchdowns, which isn't something that has been happening with the Colts offense. The next player here that I'm going to be talking about is Evan Ingram, who I would love to put higher on this list, but due to the fact that the Jaguars offense has been going mostly through their wide receivers, I cannot do that. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been a happy surprise for many teams with the fact that Christian Kirk and Zay Jones have been averaging 9 and 8 targets per game, respectively. Evan Ingram has been relegated to only 4 targets per game, which is not what we were hoping to see from that player. So, unfortunately, Evan Ingram goes into the C tier, as you hope that maybe he has a game where he gets a ton of targets, like what happened earlier in this season, and you hope to see that his productivity goes up, as Doug Peterson is definitely someone who gives a lot of targets to the tight end position. The next person I'm going to be talking about here is the Chargers. Now, the Chargers have a very interesting position here with their tight end position. As we all know, Keenan Allen has been out for what is now announced to be 3 weeks so far, and who knows where he is going to be at moving forward on that. So Gerald Everett has been getting a ton of work in that offense. He is number 8 in the tight end targets per game list with 6.5 targets per game, a very respectable amount. However, unfortunately for Gerald Everett, that still only moves him to the number 3 spot on that offense, as the LA Chargers have been targeting Austin Eckler 7.3 times per game. So if Gerald Everett's ceiling with Keenan Allen out is this 6.5 targets per game, we struggle to move him up higher than the C tier, though if Keenan Allen continues to miss more time, he can argue to be into the B tier. The next person I'll be talking about is Darren Waller, who has undoubtedly been a disappointment to the Raiders offense, as that whole offense with their passing scheme has been. Now, the Raiders offense is looking to navigate more towards the rushing game with Josh Jacobs having an emergence. However, that will not be an option for every single game. The Chiefs last week held Leonard Fournette to 3 yards, as well as the entire Bucs rushing offense to only 3 yards total between their running backs. And Josh Jacobs may not be able to do that against the Chiefs, who they play against this week. So they might be looking to get short yardage gains elsewhere. Darren Waller would be a great opportunity for that. And so we're going to be putting him in the B tier, as he should still have a role in this offense at the tight end position. However, there's been a lot of uncertainty there. Hunter Renfrow has absolutely been breaking out, and Josh Jacobs has been getting targets as well. So Darren Waller goes into the B tier here. The next player that I'll be talking about is Mike Gesicki with the Miami Dolphins. Mike Gesicki may earn himself a C-tier option if Jalen Waddle misses time due to injury. However, right now it looks like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle will be playing on Sunday, so we will be putting him in the D tier. You completely just hope that he has a random game where he catches a bunch of touchdowns, as his role in the offense does not look good for the Dolphins, as he has been mostly relegated to pass blocking and run blocking. The next team we'll be talking about is the Minnesota Vikings. Irv Smith has been having a good year so far for the Vikings. He has been the number 3 target for that team, but that is not very good anyways. With only 5 targets per game, that puts him tied for the tight end 14 spot, right behind Dalton Schultz and Hayden Hurst. So we're going to have to be putting him in the C tier position. Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson are absolutely dominating the targets on that team, and most of the targets are going there, with KJ Osborne getting a certain amount as well, and Dalvin Cook getting more than him as well. However, that is still a good passing offense and a team that is going to be headed to the red zone as much as any other team on the C-tier list. And so when I'm looking for a red zone offensive player, I'll be looking at Irv Smith, as he is definitely a good option there. The next player I'm going to be talking about is Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith of the New England Patriots. Now, as many people know, Jonnu Smith is week to week due to an injury that he had during last week's game. And so, regardless, he will be put into the D tier. Until we know more about the Jonnu Smith injury and see if he will be playing for the next few weeks, we cannot move him up higher onto this list. We have to put him in the D tier. And so many people will be saying, well, what about Hunter Henry? That guy was good enough last year, just when he got the increased workload. And the reason that he is not being higher is the fact that Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith combined are only getting 4.75 targets per game, which would put them on the much lower end of startable tight ends in this league.
If we were to give all of Jonnu Smith's targets, a 3.7 per game, not very good. With Hunter Henry's 2.3 targets per game, it is just not someone that you want to start every single week. And so you'll be looking at different options. The next team that we'll be talking about here is the New Orleans Saints, who go into the D tier as well. And you are starting to see a trend here, and that most tight ends belong in the D tier. Most teams do not use that position very often, and it is moving further and further down on the value board for these teams. Juwan Johnson is, of course, a Saints tight end number one, averaging 4.3 targets per game. However, Adam Troutman is also averaging 2 targets per game, and just both of those players are going to be stealing snaps, stealing targets from each other. There's just not a lot of productivity there, given the fact that Michael Thomas and Chris Olave are definitely leading the team in targets. Alvin Kamara will be getting his, and Jarvis Landry will not be forgotten either. The Saints tight end position is just not someone you want to target. Now, the next team I'm going to be talking about here is the New York Giants. Daniel Bellinger actually leads the tight end position in targets there, and it is just not something you want to see. When the New York Giants were out with all of their receivers, and it was looking like, okay, Daniel Bellinger has to have a good week this week because they have no one else to throw to. He had a very disappointing 3 targets in that last week's game, and it is just proven once again that the tight end position is just completely unpredictable, and you have to try and find someone who has a good target floor despite the fact that there are these injuries to that team. Daniel Bellinger is not a good option to start any week. The next team that I'm going to be talking about is the New York Giants, and while many people will be screaming at me for having this player way too low on the list, I am going to be putting Tyler Conklin into the D tier. Now, the biggest reason for that is that I am not a Zach Wilson believer. What we got to see from Tyler Conklin when he was with Joe Flacco was 7 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets. Something you were very happy to see as an owner of him, as he was averaging 8 targets per game. And then when Zach Wilson came in, Tyler Conklin averaged 5 targets per game, and is just complete embarrassment there from the Jets offense, as many players were not productive at all. Zach Wilson is a quarterback who struggles when he does not have a clean pocket, as that is something that he had very frequently when he was in college. And so the tight ends will be used frequently for the blocking situation, and many of the dump off targets will be going to Breece Hall and Michael Carter instead, who are both ahead of Tyler Conklin this last week in targets. You need to find a different tight end if you are looking at that position, as Tyler Conklin will not be the guy you want to start in the future. The next target option that I talk about here is Pat Freiermuth. Now, Pat Freiermuth is a tight end of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I am going to put into the D tier just because of J.J. Zachary's mobile quarterback and how rookie quarterbacks affect their teams, and the fact that they cannot support many pass receiving options on the same team. The Pittsburgh Steelers have a horrible schedule up ahead of them, and they're going to be really struggling against the pass rushes that are in front of them, and they're going to be needing Pat Freiermuth as well as any other tight ends they can get to be doing pass blocking for them, as that offensive line has been absolutely terrible. Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and George Pickens will not be forgotten about on this offense, and they are going to get more targets than Pat Freiermuth. He is someone that has to be put into the D tier due to the fact that we don't know what his connection with Kenny Pickett is like. We know that Kenny Pickett can run and will want to run and will struggle to do that with the defenses that they have coming up. Pat Freiermuth is not a guy that I want to start. Next tight end on this list is Will Dissly of the Seattle Seahawks. Will Dissly also earns himself a D spot on this list. Will Dissly is just not someone you're wanting to start, as a Seahawks offense, while it has been somewhat efficient and their defense has been horrible, has not been targeting the tight end position very often, as Tyler Lockett and the DK Metcalf, have been dominating the targets for that team. DK Metcalf is number 1 in the targets, averaging 8.8 per game, while Tyler Lockett is at a respectable 8.5 per game, making Tyler Lockett the number 2 on the list of number 2 receivers on a team with the most targets, only behind Jalen Waddle. And it just shows that the Seattle Seahawks plan is to run the ball with Rashad Penny, and then it is to pass to Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf exclusively when they are forced to. Will Dissly does not have a place on your fantasy team outside of a desperate start. Next team I'm going to be talking about, and finally we get another good tight end, is going to be the 49ers' George Kittle, who I am extremely excited to put into the A tier. George Kittle missed a few weeks due to injury and was definitely dropped on a lot of draft boards going into the season, as Trey Lance's usage of the tight end position was completely unknown, and we weren't sure what that passing offense was going to look like. And while the 49ers do want to run the ball the most, Jimmy Garoppolo is back, and he has a great connection with George Kittle. He is someone I'm very happy to put into the A tier, as the 49ers will be needing to pass, and George Kittle is absolutely in that. A lot of players will say, okay, but they're still without their left tackle. George Kittle's going to be needed to use for pass blocking. Well, that is not necessarily true. Last week in their game against the Rams, who have a very formidable pass rush, the 49ers only used George Kittle to pass block twice out of the 24 passing snaps that they had. He ran 22 routes. So that is a 2 to 22 ratio. Definitely a good chance for George Kittle to get more targets as he's running lots of routes, putting him into the A tier. Another candidate, I think, of buying low at the tight end position. The next team that I'll be talking about here is going to be the Buccaneers. And I am not super excited about the Buccaneers tight end position. I think that Cade Otton deserves a spot on the starting roster, as he has been good when he has the ball in his hand. However, Cameron Brate is the more established tight end there and is someone who is being looked at. Chris Godwin is healthy this week. Mike Evans is not suspended, and so they are going to dominate the targets, as Russell Gage has actually been the number 2 target on that team right now. Leonard Fournette is going to be getting his option. So when I put the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Cameron Brate onto the C tier, it is for the same reason I have put all of these players onto the C tier, in that I want them to get to the red zone, and then I want him to hopefully catch a touchdown, so I will be happily putting him in the C tier. The next tight end that I'll be talking about is the Tennessee Titans, and it is not the player you would think it is, as it is instead Geoff Swaim, who is averaging 3.5 targets per game, at the very big dismays of the Austin Hooper fans out there. Austin Hooper was a guy that players were saying, okay, I can absolutely see the path for this guy to be the number 1 or number 2 target on the team, as he is a talented tight end when he gets the ball in his hand. We got to see that as some of the past teams that he has been on. Austin Hooper can, of course, establish himself to be a target person, while Treylon Burks gets his feet back under him, and Robert Woods establishes some rapport with Ryan Tannehill. However, instead, Ryan Tannehill has been thrown to the guy he knows, and that's Geoff Swaim. The Tennessee Titans are averaging 5 passes to Robert Woods a game, 4 passes to Treylon Burks, and 3.5 to Geoff Swaim. Not a tight end situation that you want to bet on, putting him in the D tier. And the last player that I'm going to be talking about is Logan Thomas of the Washington Commanders, who, without injury to J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson, will not be someone that you want to start every week, because Logan Thomas has just been averaging a very abysmal number of targets. Right now, he is near the bottom of the totem pole with averaging 5 targets per game. You can definitely find better options there, considering how bad the Commanders' offense has been once Carson Wentz reverted back to what Carson Wentz really is, and you'll be putting him on the D tier. Well, that about does it for all of the tight end rankings right here. Once again, the S tier are the players you want to start every week and are super happy to have. Your A tier are players that you can start every week with confidence. Even though they will have absolutely dud weeks, there is production to come, as it is established there. The B tier players are players that you may want to have 1 or 2 of in this tier, and start the one that you think has a better situation or better path to targets on that week. A personal favorite of mine is David Njoku. And then the C tier are the players that you hope, because they're on good offenses, will get down to the red zone and will hopefully catch you a touchdown. If you cannot get one of these top 10 tight ends, you're going to start one of these guys hopefully each week, and you're going to pray and hope that they catch a touchdown. Robert Tonyan is a great option for that, as there is an established red zone rapport there with Aaron Rodgers. However, Evan Ingram may have the largest target floor for this group. And then the D tier players are players that you do not want to start. If you are a person who owns Tyler Conklin or Pat Fryermuth, you may want to see if you can sell either of those two players for one of these players who may even be in the B tier, and hope that you can get more production from them. Well, that about does it for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and have a good one.